I don't know about you guys, but this tournament has really delivered the first couple of days. What's up, tennis fans? Sleepy Picks here. We're going to go through the second round picks for the bottom half of the draw of the Madrid Masters. Let's take a look at the draw. Here's a look at Bublik's eighth of the draw. First match we're going to talk about is Bublik playing Tsitsipas. And guys, what did we say about that Tsitsipas-Gibson match? We knew it was going to be Tsitsipas, and I told you guys it was going to be the most difficult match of all time for Tsitsipas to win. And it really was a big back and forth match here. Tsitsipas able to get through this match. Gibson did have a break point at 5-all in the second set. So a chance for him potentially to break and serve out the match, but not able to convert there. Tsitsipas just a little bit too strong. Obviously, when Tsitsipas got a hold of the ball, he was dominating the rallies, but there were just way too many misses today from Tsitsipas. Even in the breakers, we had a couple loose points from Gibson, but really not a clean match from Tsitsipas. He's still able to get through here, and now he takes on a guy that he's 2-0 against in Alexander Bublik. And we've talked about Bublik before. Bublik not having the best of clay court seasons just yet. Sitting at 2-2 right now for Bublik. His two wins coming against Lehechka and Monfils in straight sets, a 6-3, 6-0 loss to Carlos Alcaraz, and then a straight set 6-4, 6-2 loss to Molchan. Tsitsipas, on the other hand, coming in at 1-2 with his sole win coming against Gibson, and he was 0-2 to start Madrid, losing to Cerundolo in straights and Merida in 3 sets. Bublik was 23-6 last year, 5-6 the year before. Tsitsipas 7-5 last year, 22-6 the year before that. We did talk about how Tsitsipas has not had a losing record on the clay his entire career, so this would be a very interesting match for him. I have a strange feeling this is going to be a very tough match. Tsitsipas with the 2 wins, but they came in 2020. One in Marseille, indoor hardcore, a 7-5, 6-3 win for Tsitsipas, and then one in Dubai, a 7-6, 6-4 win for Tsitsipas as well. We know that Tsitsipas does play well over in Dubai, and he does like the faster surfaces, but he has had a lot of success on the clay as well. I think this is going to be 3 sets. I think it's going to be Bublik. I cannot. After what I just saw from Tsitsipas today, all the errors, all the mistakes, he had the biggest shot. He was able to redirect against Gibson. He was able to hit behind Gibson, and that kept him in the match enough so that he could convert 2 breakers and win the match. But against Bublik, I don't know. This is kind of like playing with fire here. I do remember, we remember seeing Tsitsipas against Munar in Miami, and I was convinced that there's no way Munar loses this match because he's playing so much better tennis, so much better hardcore tennis than we're seeing from Tsitsipas. But Tsitsipas had that head-to-head against Munar, and it proved to be correct. I mean, the reason why he had the head-to-head, he was just stepping in and hitting a lot of shots off of the Munar ground strokes, and you could tell he was very comfortable hitting against Munar. Could that be the case here with Bublik? They haven't played since 2020, though, so I'm not going to put too much weight on that head-to-head. I think this is going to be a tricky match for Bublik. I'm going to have Bublik to advance in 3 sets. Next match, we have Merida against Moutet. And how about that match against Trungelliti for Merida? I mean, what a comeback, saving match points, winning in a breaker. Just incredible stuff from Merida, and especially considering we talked about how frustrating it must be to have won and gotten your main draw entry, and your main draw match is against the same guy that you just played. I mean, what an amazing match here for Merida to get through. He was a straight sets he won in the in the qualifiers final round, 7-6, 6-3. Comes out, wins the first set 6-4, able to break Trunzoliti in the middle of the set. Then we see the offensive power from Trunzoliti just dictating a lot of points, really moving Merida around. Merida not really able to do much to counter that offense. And Trunzoliti able to win that set 6-1. Then we have a back and forth third set where Trunzoliti able to get a breaking serve for the match at 6-5, has a couple of match points, both saved by Merida. Merida gets it to a breaker, and he's able to win. And guys, this crowd was insane. I mean, it felt like a Davis Cup environment. You had the horns, you had the whistles. It was unreal. The crowd was living and dying with every single shot that Merida was hitting. If you have a chance to watch the highlights of this match or watch the end of the third set, I would highly recommend you do that. This was just such a fun match to watch, and it really did deliver. This is one of the matches that, yes, the Tsitsipas match, 2 tie breaks, okay, but this match just delivered on all different levels for me. Exciting tennis, a lot of tough clay court points they played as well. Trunzoliti did not play a bad match. He did not play a bad third set. Merida was just able to wrestle that match away from him. He now takes on Moutet, who is no head-to-head between these guys. Moutet coming in, he is 3-3 on the clay, 10-9 last year, 22-15 the year before, and we know Moutet has that the ability to hit a lot of drop shots and some touch. He's going to get Merida moving around. Moutet coming off a straight set loss to Musetti, 6-3, 6-4 in Barcelona, and our big question here for Merida, and it's our question in every tournament with Merida, is can he go another 3 sets? Right now, Merida has 5 hours and 50 minutes on the clay so far this week for this tournament. Can he add another 2 or 2.5 hours? Imagine how emotionally exhausting that match must have been. Obviously, yes, physically, but I think Merida will be able to physically recover. I'm concerned a little bit about the emotional weight of winning that match in a Masters series. Your home tournament. You have the entire crowd cheering for you. You have to play a guy that you just played in the final round of qualifying, who you've never beaten before. And then you beat him in qualifying, and now you just beat him in back-to-back matches in less than 48 hours. I mean, huge accomplishment here for Merida. Can he capitalize on it against Moutet? I'm kind of leaning towards no, unfortunately. I do wonder, though, if this crowd is really going to be able to get into it. We did have not a packed crowd, but a raucous crowd for Moutet's match against Taha Badi, a Moroccan player in Marrakesh. So I feel like Moutet is going to be okay with the crowd. This is going to be a much more raucous crowd. You got the horns and the whistles and everything. It's going to be much different for Moutet. Will he be able to handle that is a question as well. I'm going to say this is going to be a 3-set battle. I think Merida gives it everything he can, but I don't think he's going to be able to get over the finish line. So I'm going to go with Moutet to advance in 3 sets. Next match, we have Fokina taking on Carreno Busta. And guys, I was a little bit surprised when I pulled this up that there is no head-to-head between these guys. This is going to be their first meeting, and most likely their last meeting, given that Carreno Busta's career is drawing to a close. Carreno Busta able to get through Fucsovics, and that was a good win for him. Just a really good tough-it-out win. You're talking about a guy who is 10-2 on the clay, and he comes up against Fucsovics, loses the first set, It looks like it's going to be a little bit tricky here for him to win this match, but he's able to tough it out. I think one of the big things that we saw him do was he had to get away from that backhand to backhand cross court rally with Fucsovics. Fucsovics was winning the majority of those in the first set. So we saw Carreno Busta start to take his backhand down the line a little bit so he could get it to so he could start to implement a few more forehands, and I felt like that changed the match a little bit. Carreno Busta able to find a little bit more offense there as well, and he was knocking on the door in a lot of the Fucsovics service games, wasn't able to get the conversion, and gets it to a breaker, able to win the breaker, and then is able to break Fucsovics in one of the first games of the third set, and then just able to cruise through that final set 6-2. So he gets a nice 4-6, 7-6, 6-2 win over Fucsovics. Great match for Carreno Busta. Now he takes on Fokina. Carreno Busta coming in, he's 10-2 on the clay, 14-4 last year, 2-4 the year before. Fokina, on the other hand, has not played a clay court match. That's extremely important when we're looking at these matchups and trying to hit these breakdowns. He was 9-6 last year, 2-5 the year before. Fokina's last match was in Miami against Quinton Halys, losing 7-6, 6-4. A little bit of a disappointment for him. He did have that tough three-setter against Leonard Tien in Indian Wells right after he was able to beat Jakub Mensik in 3 sets. So we've seen some decent tennis here from Fokina throughout this year, but nothing too imposing. Obviously, Carreno Busta with that 10-2 clay court record is pretty impressive, honestly, given the fact that he was able to get through this Fucsovics match. I know a lot of these records here are from the challenger level, so yes, I know we can't read too much into that, but I always feel that winning will always produce more winning, and guys kind of forget how to lose in situations like that as they start to increase their records. And we might see that from Carreno Busta, but I'm very inclined to pick Fokina here. I know he's only had one losing season on the clay. Carreno Busta, on the other hand, yes, he's 10-2 on the clay this year, but he was 14-14 last year. The majority of those matches were in ATP level tournament events. Then 2-4 the year before. Hasn't had a winning record since 2022. I think this is going to be a tough match, though, because I don't think Fokina's been playing the best of tennis. So I'm going to go with Fokina to advance here. I think it's going to take him a little bit of time to get acclimated to the clay. And maybe Carreno Busta can pull out that first set. But give me Fokina to advance in 3 sets. Next match is probably one of the more lopsided head-to-heads that we have here. Casper Ruud taking on Munar. Munar able to get through Shevchenko, and unfortunately I wasn't able to get eyes on that match. A 6-4, 6-1 victory for Munar. We expected him to get through Shevchenko pretty easily. Shevchenko not a fan of the clay, a little bit more of a hard court guy. So good win for Munar. I know after we saw Munar against Hadar, we really thought, wow, is he ever going to get back to kind of like that higher level? He just got destroyed by Hadar. But able to come in here and get a straight set win, only dropping 5 games. I think that's going to give you a lot of confidence moving forward. However, he does now run up against a guy that is 7-1 against him. Let's look at their previous meetings here. Let's start. There were 4 since January of 2025. So let's go through all of those. Casper Ruud able to win the first. In January 2025, he won in Australian Open. It was a tough 5-setter. 6-3, 1-6, 7-5, 2-6, 6-1. That was a first-round match, 5-set win for Casper Ruud. He then goes to Dallas, where he's able to beat Munar again, 6-2, 2-6, 7-6 in the semifinals. That's an indoor hard court. And last year they faced each other in Rome. Casper Ruud able to get a 6-3, 6-4 win over Munar. And then this year, they played in the Australian Open second round. And remember, people were clamoring about that. That was going to be a tricky match for Casper Ruud. But he's able to get through it in straight sets, 6-3, 7-5, 6-4. A very nice win there for Casper Ruud. It looks like he's kind of getting a stranglehold on this head-to-head and hasn't dropped a set since their third to last meeting. We have Munar coming in. He's 1-1 on the clay with that one loss to Hadar and the win over Shevchenko. Was 6-10 last year, 25-17 the year before. Casper Ruud, on the other hand, 2-1 this year, 14-5 last year, 24-7 the year before. Casper's 2 wins coming against Popyrin and Moutet, and then a retirement loss to Felix. Obviously, with a potential injury lurking, we got to keep an eye on that. I remember him talking to Felix about that. He said that came out of nowhere in the second set. He was up in the first set, then gets broken back. Felix is able to close out that set 7-5. And then we get a retirement from Casper Ruud with an injury. Hopefully he's doing much better now. Obviously, we would think if he's in this draw, he's going to be ready to go 100%. I got to pick Casper Ruud here. I don't know if Munar is going to be ready just yet to push a guy of the caliber of Casper Ruud. And we know, of course, Casper Ruud is the defending champion here, winning in 2025, beating Draper in 3 sets. He does perform pretty well here historically. I'm going to go with him to beat Munar here and increase that head-to-head 8-1 against him. So give me Casper Ruud to advance in straight sets. Here's a look at Bublik's 8th of the draw, and I picked pretty chalky here, but honestly, guys, all 4 of these matchups, it wouldn't surprise me if any of these other unseeded players were able to beat the seeded player. I think these are all going to be very tricky matchups. You know, you got Merida and Moutet, who have never played before. Carreno, Busta, and Fokina, who have never played before. A 2-0 head-to-head for Tsitsipas against Bublik. A 7-1 head-to-head for Ruud against Munar. But we know Munar's capable of playing tough, grinded-out tennis. So if Casper Ruud is not fully healthy or not feeling it that day, he might be in a little bit of trouble. Overall, I feel like this is going to be a Bublik quarter. I think he's going to be able to advance here. And honestly, guys, you know, we did talk about Tsitsipas. That match felt like a must-win to kind of correct everything for him. This Bublik draw really is starting to feel like a must make the quarters at least, you know, to keep his momentum at least running a little bit more. He was able to make it out in Monte Carlo, but lost to Carlos Alcaraz. This, to me, I think is a must-make quarterfinal at the very least for Bublik, especially considering some of the competition here. Something tells me that Casper Ruud's going to have something to say about that, but we got to keep an eye on Casper Ruud with that potential injury. That was a little bit concerning, retiring against Felix. Just out of nowhere, really, it felt like. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. He is the defending champion, so he's going to have something to say about that. But for me, I feel like Bublik's got to be able to advance out of this. So I think he's going to be the one to do it. Let's move on to the next part of the draw. Here's a look at Auger-Aliassime's 8th of the draw. First match we're going to talk about is Francisco Cerundolo against Hanfmann. Hanfmann able to get through Marcos Giron, and I really liked what we saw from Hanfmann. You could tell he was very, very confident moving on the clay. Giron, this was Giron's first match on the clay for the season, so you could see a little bit the hesitation, but we got to credit Garon. He was able to play a very strong match against Hanfmann, but Hanfmann just a little bit too big in some of the important points, coming up with some big forehands, coming up with some drop shots to keep Garon on the defensive. I definitely think the drop shot worked really well for him because Garon was so far back off the baseline that Hanfmann didn't even have to hit a really good drop shot in order to get Garon in, either to put the volley away or to just get an outright winner on the drop. So great match for Hanfmann to get through. Tough match to grind it out against a solid player in Marcos Giron. Now he takes on Cerundolo, and this is a 5-2 head-to-head for Cerundolo. Let's go through some of these matchups. This is a rematch of the Chile Open semifinals where Hanfmann was able to take Cerundolo out 6-3, 6-4. And guys, remember, I remember picking Cerundolo to win that match. I thought it was going to be a Cerundolo-Darderi rematch in Chile. That would have been the rematch of the Buenos Aires final that Cerundolo was able to win over Darderi, but not to be there. A straight set win for Hanfmann, guys. You know how much we love the revenge factor. Is that going to play in here? I think it might, and I think somebody like Cerundolo takes those losses very personally. I think he does not want to have back-to-back clay court losses to Hanfmann. They did also play in 2024 in the French Open. Cerundolo able to win in straight sets. And then they played in the Chile Open in 2025, and that was a tough three-setter. So perhaps Hanfmann is a little bit more comfortable on the courts in Santiago. We'll have to see tomorrow, the next day, how that goes over. Cerundolo coming in, he's 10-4 on the clay, 21-11 last year, 21-13 the year before. We know how much he loves the clay. Only 125 losses, which, does sound like a lot, but it really isn't. He's won 286 matches on the clay. Cerundolo's coming off a tough 3-set loss in Munich to Zverev. And honestly, guys, that match was a little bit weird. I feel like there were a lot of nerves from Alexander Zverev, especially given, obviously, he ran into a wall, or I guess a buzzsaw against Cobolli, who played a lights-out day in the semifinals. But here, he had a lead in the first set. Then Cerundolo was able to fight back and break to win the first set, and then was nowhere to be found for the final 2 sets. I feel like Zverev was able to kind of neutralize some of that Cerundolo power, start to force more issues to the backhand side of Cerundolo, and just challenge the movement of Cerundolo, where I felt like the movement towards the end of the first set was Zverev's that was being challenged. Hanfmann, on the other hand, coming in, he's 8-3 on the clay right now, 17-12 last year, 12-15 the year before. Got that nice win over Marcos Giron. Had a tough loss to Alexander Blockx, who we know is playing some very solid tennis. Guys, just looking at this matchup, I gotta go with Cerundolo. I really like the way that he plays. I do get a little bit nervous, though, because there are days where that forehand can go off and you're like, what is happening here? But then there are days where it clicks and he's just roping shots. I think he's going to be looking for some revenge here. He does own the head-to-head record against Hanfmann, but that previous loss has now cut the lead, I guess, for Hanfmann in their head-to-head. I think this is going to be a tricky match. I feel like I'm feeling it's going to be a 3-setter, but I got to pick Cerundolo here, so give me Cerundolo to advance in 3. Next match is Juan Manuel Cerundolo against Darderi. Juan Manuel Cerundolo able to get through Altmaier, and tough match for Altmaier. We picked him to get through. I thought the offensive Altmaier was going to make the difference here, but what ended up making the difference was the heavy lefty spin of Juan Manuel Cerundolo to the Altmaier backhand. Altmaier just not really able to neutralize that, and Altmaier did jump out to a 3-0 lead in the blink of an eye. It felt like he was dominating a lot of this match, but Cerundolo just wasn't connecting with a lot of his shots. I felt like he was trying to be a little bit too aggressive. Maybe it was because of the offense that Altmaier can produce. And whenever you have guys like that, clay quarters, that you see they're making errors, you should tell yourself, there's no way this can last for an entire match. Like, I knew Juan Manuel Cerundolo was going to find it at some point, and then it was going to become a match. And once he started to kind of hone everything in and bring everything in, he gets it back to 3-all. He's able to break and win the set 6-4, able to win the next set 6-4 as well. And just a tough match for Altmaier to lose. I feel like especially when you have the better weapons on the court, you have the stronger ground strokes for sure. And he just wasn't. He was being pushed back too far on the backhand side, and he just made way too many mistakes. And that's what Juan Manuel Cerundolo lives off of. He's getting every ball back. He's making you play one extra shot every single time. So great win there for Juan Manuel Cerundolo. He now takes on Luciano Darderi, and this is going to be an interesting match. Head-to-head is 3-3 for each of them. So let's go back to 2024. Cerundolo able to get a win in Rio, 6-2, 6-2. Then Darderi able to win in Chile, 6-3, 3-6, 6-3 in the third round. That was in 2024. They don't play in 2025, and then they just played in Rio. And this was the match that followed Darderi's loss in Buenos Aires to Francisco Cerundolo. And the one thing that we had kind of talked about, I remember in that match, was I wonder if the Francisco Cerundolo coaching camp was sharing notes with the Juan Manuel Cerundolo coaching camp, because the first set was just played by Juan Manuel Cerundolo to perfection. Finding some weaknesses of Darderi, frustrating him a little bit, and then a tough 3-set win in the first round over a very solid clay quarter in Darderi. And we honestly haven't seen much positive things from Darderi recently. 9-5 on the clay. I know we're thinking, wow, that's good. But a lot of those wins came over in the South American swing, where he made the finals of Buenos Aires, where he won at Chile. Now we're coming onto the European clay swing, and we have a win against Bellucci, walkover against Hanfmann, a loss to Trungiuliti, then a first-round loss in Monte Carlo to Hurkacz, and then a second-round loss in Munich to Kopchiva. And remember, that match against Kopchiva, it was clearly a mental game for Darderi. He thought after dropping that second set that the match would be halted and they would have to come back the next day, and he kind of pled his case with the tournament director. He didn't think that they should be playing because there wouldn't be enough time to finish the match, and they denied him, and he looked like that was it. Gets rolled 6-1 by Kopchiva. Cerundolo, on the other hand, coming in, he's 11-7 right now on the clay, 39-19 last year, 46-25 the year before. He's coming off a tough loss to Nakashima in the first round of Barcelona, but was able to qualify over De Jong, who we just saw push Hadar to the limit, and Zeppieri. Juan Manuel Cerundolo did have a tough match against Vacero in Monte Carlo, and you guys remember that match. That was the one where Juan Manuel Cerundolo up a set and a break against Vacero, who makes it out to the semifinals of Monte Carlo. And then all of a sudden in that match, Vacero finds his forehand, he finds his offense, he's able to bully Juan Manuel Cerundolo, not making as many mistakes, and he was able to close that match out 6-1 in the third set. So once he kind of got that confidence, putting some aggression into that forehand, he was able to get some success. Darderi, on the other hand, is able to do that, but I just think Juan Manuel Cerundolo is going to make you hit one or two too many extra shots. We just haven't seen great clay court tennis from Luciano Darderi yet, and I think this is going to be a very frustrating match for him here. So I'm going to pick Juan Manuel Cerundolo. I think he advances in 3 sets. Next match, we have Nakashima taking on Blockx, and Block's able to get through Garin. We talked about how that match was going to be a little bit trickier. Originally Block's was supposed to play Bublik van de Zandschulp, and I thought that was a nice matchup for him. He was going to get some errors, some mistakes from Bublik, and it would have depended on how the Bublik game was going to be able to impose itself on Block's, but not to be there. Bublik pulls out. Garin comes in as a lucky loser. Garin coming off that really tough loss to Martin Damm Jr., and that was a really interesting match. I really thought Garin was going to be able to win that pretty handily, but we'll talk about Martin Damm. I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen from him on the clay. I still don't think the movement is there, but I've been impressed with what he's been able to do. I'll talk about that one when we get to his match. But Block's able to survive here, 4-6, 7-5, 7-5. Garin, again, some opportunities to win the match in that second set. But once, I know it was a close match too, but did we really think Blockx was going to lose that third set? Not me. I know Garin has got great clay court prowess, but unfortunately, I do also remember that Zverev match, and that was a match where he was up a double break. He had him, and he let it slip away there. Now we have Blockx coming in against Nakashima, and yes, he played a very, very tough match, a 2-hour, 20-minute match against Garin. I think this is going to be a pretty good matchup for Alexander Blockx. Now, they have played twice. They met in a Challenger in 2023, a 6-1, 6-2 win for Nakashima. That's indoor hard court. And then they played in Cincinnati last year, a 4-6, 6-3, 7-6 outdoor hard court win for Nakashima. I just feel like Blockx has really matured a lot since then. He's 6-2 right now on the clay. Was 4-4 last year, 7-3 the year before. Coming off that tough loss to Ben Shelton in Munich, and that really felt like if that went 3 sets, I think Blockx was going to win it. It felt like Shelton was just not playing the right shots. He was getting into these extended rallies with Blockx. It was very questionable, some of the game plan of what Shelton was doing, but he was able to get through with some big serving, some big forehands, and some surprising drop shots that worked against Blockx. I think this is going to be Blockx over Nakashima here, guys. I just have that achy feeling that that Blockx is going to be able to survive this match here, and he will expose the poor movement of Nakashima. We've talked about Nakashima being exposed by Arthur Fils in that way. Able to beat Juan Manuel Cerundolo, a very solid clay court win for Nakashima, but I really do feel like Nakashima had seen that style previously with Burruchaga. That counter-punching, get every ball back style, and he was ready to go from the start against Juan Manuel Cerundolo. I think this is going to be Blockx here, guys. I think it's going to be straight sets. So give me Blockx to advance in straights. Next match is Gaubas against Felix Auger-Aliassime. And I feel like Felix did breathe a sigh of relief not having to play Sebastian Baez. And because Baez is a very tough customer against anyone, and he likes the pace that some of these guys like Felix give him, where he can kind of redirect the ball a little bit better. Gaubas, no pace whatsoever, so Baez had to be a little bit more the aggressor, and he made a lot of mistakes there. I felt like Gaubas didn't really do much. He had the forehand, I guess, a little bit better, but a lot of mistakes on the Baez racket today. And that was really unfortunate. That first set could have gone either way. It goes 7-5 to Gaubas, and then Gaubas able to just roll by a 6-1. Now, looking at this head-to-head here for these two guys, they have not played each other. Auger-Aliassime comes in. He's 2-1 on the clay right now, 3-6 last year, 17-8 the year before. Auger-Aliassime's 2 wins were against Marin Cilic and Casper Ruud. The Casper Ruud match was a retirement due to an injury, though, from Casper. And that was an injury, though, that Casper said kind of snuck up on him in the second set and didn't mention it hurting him or affecting him in the first set. So, honestly, if you look at it there, it looks like Felix won that set. He won that first set 7-5, and we know Casper's a very strong clay court player. So for Felix to win that is definitely a great, to win the first set is a good result for him. Gaubas, on the other hand, coming in 10-8 on the clay, 36-19, 40-20 the year before that. We know this guy loves the clay courts, and he was able to get some good wins in qualifying, beating Arthur Gia and Sakamoto, and then taking out Baez in straight sets. Gaubas had a very tough first-round qualifying loss in Barcelona to Medvedev, who we know was able to make it out to the semifinals there. It was a 15-13 score in the breaker first set for Gaubas and Medvedev able to win that and get a break in the second to hold on for the match. So Gaubas is capable of playing good tennis. This could potentially be a tricky match for Felix Auger-Aliassime, but I kind of like what I've been seeing a lot from Felix. We're seeing a little bit more of the heavy spin being incorporated rather than that early flat ball that he normally hits. So I think Felix is going to continue the success that we saw a little bit of in Monte Carlo. I think he's going to continue it here over Gaubas. I think this is a nice opportunity for him to get out here and play Alexander Blockx. That would be a very interesting matchup. But for now, give me Felix to advance in straight sets. And here's a look at Auger-Aliassime's part of the draw. And guys, honestly, I would love to see a Cerundolo matchup in the round of 32. I think that would be awesome. Something tells me that maybe Hanfmann's going to get through there. I always feel like, I talked to you guys about it. I always feel like we're like one match away from a Cerundolo match, and then somebody ruins it. I wonder who it'll be here, because I feel like it's not going to happen. On the other side of the draw, I think Blockx is going to advance. And honestly, I got to give Blockx the edge here to advance out to the quarter in this part of the draw. I think he's got it, and I think he's due for a little bit more of a run than he had in Monte Carlo. So I could see him getting out to the quarters here and starting to make a name for himself at least. So give me Blockx to advance here in this part of the draw. Let's move on to the next part. Here's a look at Medvedev's 8th of the draw. And guys, this has been the revenge tour of Merida. He got his revenge over Ethan Quinn for that tough loss in Davis Cup, that 3-setter ending in a tough tiebreak on the clay. Merida able to avenge that, win 2 tiebreakers today, and he looked pretty strong. He was able to dictate. The one big thing that helped him the most was that serve and the serve +1, able to just kind of get on top of Quinn and not really let Quinn get into a lot of these points on his serve. Every time he was in kind of like a pressure situation, we saw him be able to serve his way out of it. Quinn did have some set points in that second set, so that's a little bit disappointing for him not to be able to convert there and force it into a third set. I don't know who would have won that, though, if it went 3. I think it was going to be very close. But Merida able to advance in straights, 7-6, 7-6. He now takes on Medvedev. Medvedev with a 3-0 head-to-head over Merida. And it looks like they play just about once a year. This is going to be the twice in 2026. They met in New York. at the U.S. Open, and it was a straight set win in 2024 for Medvedev, 6-3, 6-2, 7-6. Then they played in the Almaty Open, and Medvedev was able to win that 7-5, 6-2. That was indoor hard court, so a little bit of a faster surface there. And then they played in Australia, and that was a 2-sets-to-love and a break lead for Merida, and he loses 6-7, 4-6, 7-5, 6-0, 6-3. And that's got to be a match that kind of sits with you for a while. But now Merida has his revenge, and I'm curious how this match is going to go. I told myself the next time this happens, I was going to pick Merida. And I told myself no matter what. So we did pick Merida correctly here. Maybe we're going to remove him off that no-pick list because he seems to be finding a little bit more of a groove on the clay than he did on the hard court. Merida coming in, he's 5-4 right now on the clay, 9-6 last year, 5-8 the year before. Has a nice win over Ethan Quinn, a good 3-set win over Tsitsipas, beat Jumer in Monte Carlo and then lost to Hurkacz. Medvedev, on the other hand, 0-1 on the clay, 6-4 last year, 11-5 the year before. He's hot and cold kind of on the clay. He's had 3 losing seasons on the clay in his career. And then we remember Medvedev coming off that 6-0, 6-0 loss to Berrettini, and that was a little bit of a puzzler there. Given the form that Medvedev was coming in, having made the finals of Indian Wells, having chances to potentially won that second set against, won the first set against Sinner and Indian Wells. Losing to Cerundolo in 3 sets in Miami, I think the body was a little bit tired. But the 6-0, 6-0 straight set loss was unreal from Medvedev. Looking at these two guys, I don't know how much I can trust Medvedev on the clay. Merida has played 9 matches so far on the clay. Yeah, he's a little bit over 500 in those matches, but I'm going to trust him a little bit more to get through a match against a guy like Medvedev than Medvedev would, who hasn't won a game on clay this year. I'm going to go with Merida. I told myself I would. If we saw this matchup again, I didn't think it was going to be on the clay. I thought maybe we were going to see it again on a hard court. But I got to go with Merida. I think he's going to right some wrongs here after that tough Australian Open loss. So give me Merida to advance in 3 sets. Next match is Budkov Jair against Shapovalov, and Budkov Jair able to beat Opelka by retirement. Sounded like it was a potential shoulder injury for Opelka. That's really concerning given the fact that he relies so heavily on that serve. So we'll have to wait and hear a little bit more, but very concerning there for Opelka. Budkov Jair able to advance 5-3 by retirement. Now he takes on Shapo, and no head-to-head here for these two guys. This will be their first meeting. Shapo's coming in. He's 2-2 on the clay, 2-5 last year, 5-6 the year before. Had a tough loss to Molchan. That was a 6-4, 6-4 loss, but Molchan was playing good tennis last week in Munich. Shapo able to beat Griekspoor in 3 sets and Merida in straights. Budkov Jair able to come through qualifying, beating Maestrelli in straights, Echargui in straights, and Opelka by retirement. Budkov Jair did also not have a great clay court European swing just yet, beating Ivashka and then losing to Roca in the Marrakesh qualifiers, losing to Jumer in the Monte Carlo qualifiers, and losing to Trungelliti in the Barcelona qualifiers. Now he finds himself in the main draw with a chance to make a little bit of a dent in the rankings for him if he's able to get this win here. But I'm going to pick Shapo to advance. I don't know if Budkov Jair is ready for these types of matches here. And I was impressed with what we saw from Shapo last week, with the way he's been able to take some of these balls early and use the slowness of the clay to help him have time to set up and rip his shots. So I would love to see Budkov win this match, but I think Shapo's going to be a little bit too much firepower from him. So give me Shapo to advance in straight sets. Next match is Vallejo against Tien. Vallejo able to come through against Dimitrov, and it was a few too many errors for me on the Dimitrov side. He was taking the ball really early. When he was able to connect with it, it looked really good, but that was just few and far between from Dimitrov, and we found too many errors there, trying to go too close to the lines, I think. But Vallejo able to find his own offense, dictate with his forehand. He's a solid clay quarter. You can tell he's got a lot of confidence on this surface. Vallejo right now is 24-6 on the clay. Was 49-24 last year, 26-23 the year before. Leonard Tien has never had a winning season on the clay. He right now he's 1-1 right now this year, losing to Chaga in straight sets in Houston, beating Basaveretti in 3, and then 3-7 last year, 0-1 the year before. So Leonard Tien has probably a little bit of growing up to do on the clay. No head-to-head from these guys, of course. This will be their first meeting here. And you remember in Houston, Vallejo really able to push Tommy Paul to a tough 3-set loss for Vallejo. But he does have that ability to challenge the comfortability of some of these players on the clay. And I think that's exactly what he's going to do with Leonard Tien. We haven't seen Leonard Tien look good on the clay just yet. So I'm going to pick Vallejo to advance here. I would love to see Leonard Tien come out and look phenomenal. We know the level that he's capable of, but the movement on the clay isn't great. He was trying to throw in a few drop shots, but that really didn't work against Chaga. I don't know if that's going to work against Vallejo either. I'm going to take Vallejo. He's going to win in straight sets. Next match is Carabelli against Cobolli, and Carabelli able to get through Monfils 6-3, 6-4. Pretty straightforward match. We talked about how Monfils was going to have the crowd. He has his offense. Was this going to be a little bit of a tricky match for Carabelli? It wasn't. I thought the defense of Carabelli really proved to be strong, forcing Monfils to hit maybe a couple extra shots, but also his ability to absorb the body blows that Monfils has. We know Monfils is going to lay a couple of big hits, big shots, that are going to get the crowd going. But Carabelli able to neutralize that and win both those sets with keeping Monfils at bay. There were opportunities for sure by Gael Monfils in the Carabelli service games to get a break, to make this kind of a closer match. But he wasn't able to do that, and Carabelli able to advance 6-3, 6-4. He takes on Cobolli, and guys, you remember I was telling you I feel like Cobolli was hoping that it was going to be Monfils just because Monfils hasn't won back-to-back matches yet this year. Monfils on that farewell tour, the crowd obviously giving him a good farewell here in Madrid. Now, looking at this head-to-head between Carabelli and Cobolli, it is 0-0. So these guys have not met before. We have Cobolli coming in. He's 5-2 on the clay, 15-6 last year, 10-9 the year before. Cobolli able to make it out to the finals of Munich, losing to Ben Shelton. Cobolli did notch a very solid win over Alexander Zverev in his home tournament. And extremely impressive stuff. It was an amazing day for Cobolli. Able to just connect with tons of his forehands and move Zverev around and make him struggle. Carabelli, on the other hand, coming off that straight set loss to Hadar in Barcelona. Carabelli's 12-5 on the clay, 27-14 last year, 52-24 the year before. He's never had a losing season on the clay, so we know this guy really enjoys playing on the dirt. Does Cobolli? I think so. He's got a lot of talent on the clay as well. I do question what Cobolli are we going to get, because remember, he won Acapulco and then turns around, wins a round against Khachanov, but loses to Tiafoe very easily. So I'm curious with what type of Cobolli we're going to get. And in that Indian Wells match, too, he came out, he was all taped up and everything. The body just wasn't able to hold up too much. But I don't know if we're going to really see that on the clay. The hard court tends to take a little bit more out of the body. The clay court points are longer, but the hard court, just like getting your feet there every single time, I think it takes a little bit more out of you. I'm going to take Cobolli here. But honestly, guys, for the guys that listen that may be looking at bets and stuff, do not bet this match. This is a 50-50 match, and we don't know what Cobolli we're going to see. Once we're able to see this match, we'll know exactly what type of Cobolli we're going to have. Because I thought in that Khachanov match, we kind of knew that Cobolli just wasn't going to be able to match up well with Tiafoe for the second time in 2 weeks. So I'm going to take Cobolli to advance here. Wouldn't surprise me if Carabelli won, but I think we're going to have to see. Cobolli would have to hit a lot of errors, I think, for Carabelli to win a match like this. So if he comes out and he's cold, it's possible. But for now, give me Cobolli in straight sets. Here's a look at Medvedev's eighth of the draw. It's kind of funny. Some of these we go chalk, taking all the seeds to advance, and then some were like 50-50. Some I'm almost 75% of upsets, but I don't know what we're gonna get from Medvedev. He's got to be able to kind of get it going on the clay, or is he just gonna say, you know what, I'm gonna focus on the hard courts this summer. That's where I'll be able to make a lot of deep runs. So I'm curious to see the Medvedev that we get here. If he's able to dispatch a Merida pretty quickly, I think that's a pretty solid win for him to get the clay court campaign going. Shapo and Budkov, I don't think Budkov's ready for this moment just yet. We'll see. If he's able to take out Shapo, that's a nice win for him to get out to the round of 32. Lerner Tien, I haven't seen anything promising from the movement and the shot selection of Lerner, so I gotta pick Vallejo. He trusts himself way more on that clay, so he's gonna be a very tough out for Lerner. And then Cobolli and Carabelli, this is a flip the coin type match for me. I could see Cobolli coming out very flat after that tough Munich loss to Shelton. But we'll have to see. Let's move on to the next part of the draw. Here's a look at Zverev's eighth of the draw. First match we're going to talk about is Walton against Khachanov. And Walton able to beat Landaluce today, 6-2, 6-3. This was a very disappointing performance from Landaluce. But again, guys, we talk about these guys, Hadar, Collignon, Landaluce, Blockx, Budkov. In order for them to get to the higher ranks of the ATP, they need results consistency. Even if you make the semifinals of one Master Series, you still need consistency in your results. Losing in the first rounds, like the way Landaluce did today, is not going to help you, especially even make your case to get into some of these draws too. Walton just absorbing a lot of the power from Landaluce, and that power seems to be not as effective on the clay court as it was on the hard courts in Miami. But great win for Walton. He gets through there. He takes on now Khachanov, and this match is going to be a really tricky one because Khachanov, we haven't seen anything great from him on the clay just yet. And Walton, we know he's not a big fan of the clay either. Just played a very smart match today against Landaluce, let the errors kind of creep in, and was able to get the win. Walton is coming in. He's 1-1 right now on the clay. 2-2 last year, 0-2 the year before. Walton has only had one positive record on the clay, and that was in 2019. He was 2-1. Khachanov, on the other hand, coming in 0-2 on the clay, 9-6 last year, 8-4 the year before, so 10-5 the year before that. So it kind of looks to me like Khachanov would be able to win a couple of rounds in each of these tournaments and then drop out or lose in the next round. Khachanov coming off a tough straight set loss to Carabelli, and that was where I kind of threw up the red flag for Khachanov. I mean, a straight set loss to Rinderknecht, I thought, okay, Rinderknecht can kind of rush you a little bit. That seems maybe a little bit understandable. In Miami, a straight set loss to Landa Luthé. At the time, we thought, man, that's a terrible loss, but Landa Luthé able to make it out to the quarterfinals. Yeah, I'm really curious about this match. I think this is going to be a little bit of a tricky match, but I think this is a get right spot for sure for Khachanov. So I got to pick Khachanov here to advance. Walton just hasn't impressed me too much on the clay. Landa Luthé, maybe I think the moment might have been a little bit too big for him with the crowd in the home tournament. I think it might have just been a little bit too big for him. For Khachanov and Walton, I'm going to take Khachanov. I think he's going to advance in straight sets. A get-right spot for Khachanov. He wins in 2. Next match, we have the surprise of the tournament, Martin Damm Jr. Taking on Jakub Mensik. Damm able to get through Alexei Popyrin in straight sets. And, that first set could have gone either way. But Martin Damm just coming up with a few clutch shots towards the end of the match or towards the end of the set. And guys, the one thing that I loved that I saw from Damm against Popyrin, and Popyrin's got a good serve. Damm was looking to step in and take some of these serves pretty early. I think that's a really nice play, and a lot of times we see, players who do that will sometimes in the bigger moments step back all the way to way behind the baseline and we're just chip the ball deep and come in. But Damm stuck with it. Even in the breaker, he was able to get rush Popyrin on some of those serves with his strong return. And I think that's going to make him a little bit different. And guys, keep in mind, too, obviously he got one break in the second set. But doing things like that, returning that aggressively, imagine the days that you're able to connect with some of those shots. Now you're just putting pressure on that guy to hold because he has the pressure already of you holding big with your serve. Damm was also able to implement the serve +1, maybe a serve +2 a little bit. So he was able to find a lot of success on his serve. He came up with a lot of big shots when he needed to. He doesn't move that well on the clay, guys. I'm still not ready to admit that Damm's a clay quarter. I mean, maybe if he beats Mensik, then I'll start to kind of come around a little bit, but he's not moving that well. He's able to just hit that big serve on any surface and then look for the forehand to crush the ball. Damm did get through Cristian Garin, who we saw he's a tricky match, played Blockx very tough. Blockx a very solid clay quarter. But Damm able to get through, beating him 7-6 in the third of the qualifiers. That's pretty impressive for Martin Damm to get through this qualifier. He's now 3-0 here in Madrid. Mensik coming off that tough loss to Tiafoe in Miami, and that feels like forever ago, guys. So this is going to be really interesting. This is his first match here on the clay. He was 6-5 last year, 6-4 the year before. So Mensik not a great clay quarter per se. Damm right now coming in, he's 3-2 right now on the clay. 0-2 last year, 1-5 the year before. Remember, Damm's 2 losses were back-to-back on the clay, and now he's 3-2. He's got a winning record now after winning these 3 matches in Madrid. So he's got to have a little bit of confidence here. I think the first set we're going to see a lot of struggle with the footing of Mensik, able to kind of get comfortable on the surface, feel the surface under him. Of course, Mensik has been practicing on the clay, but playing a match pace is much different. So expect Damm to put a lot of pressure on Mensik early on with the serve, with the aggressive returns. I just can't, I said this about against Popperin. I just can't see Damm advancing over Mensik. I would be so impressed if he was able to on the clay. I'm going to take Mensik here. I think it's going to be a three-setter. I think Damm's going to be able to win that first set, and then Mensik's going to wake up and take the match. So give me Mensik to advance in 3. Next match, we have the Bucharest champion Navone taking on Alexander Zverev. Navone able to get through Borges 6-3, 6-4, and, I thought that match might have been a little bit closer, but Navone looked a lot better. He started to bring in the some of the shots. I felt like the match that he lost against Rublev, we saw just a lot of uncharacteristic misses from Navone. I felt like he's trying to play a little bit too big because of the way Rublev was playing and how solid Rublev was playing, that Navone felt like he had to play a little bit better. And don't you guys think that we're going to get something similar to that here against Zverev? I feel like this might be a little bit over his head here. No head-to-head here for these guys. This will be their first meeting. We remember Zverev coming off that tough loss, 6-3, 6-3 to Cobolli, where Cobolli just played lights-out tennis. I mean, you got to hand it to him there. Zverev sitting at 6-2 on the clay, was 18-7 last year, 23-6 the year before. Navone, on the other hand, 8-4 on the clay, 30-16 last year, 27-14 the year before. He likes playing on the clay, able to get that Bucharest win in a tough three-setter over Merida. I feel like maybe this could be tricky, but I think Zverev he's got to be ready to go. I'm sure he's angry about what happened in Munich. I think he's going to be ready to just kind of like steamroll through this draw and at least make it to the quarterfinals. So give me Zverev in straights. And here's a look at Zverev's 8th of the draw. I do think this is going to be, it really is his draw to lose here. I mean, if he plays even like B tennis, I think he's going to be able to get out of here. Mensik maybe, depending on how he looks here on the clay. He hasn't played a clay court match, so I'll be curious how he looks against Damm. Khachanov has not shown us anything promising on the clay. Ottman's going to be a tough test. He's got that big forehand, so we'll see how Zverev handles that. I think Zverev's going to be able to take out Ottman pretty handily, though. And then he would play Mensik or Khachanov, so I think he wins either of those. So Zverev's going to advance through to the quarterfinals here. Here's looking at our first round records, 22-10. That's pretty solid for us going through some of these matches. Hopefully we can keep this going into the second round. And as always, guys, thanks again for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Share your picks in the comments. Share the video. We'll have a video out every single night recapping all the matches that happened that day in Madrid. And we will also preview some of our picks. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.